whole life has changed ever since you came in. I knew way back then that you was heaven sent, angel here on earth. I love your mama for your birth.
TV crew, it's your man Braxton.
And your lady Tia.
And as you guys know, we like to spotlight those that we feel are impacting the culture. And today we have a very special guest with us.
Today's special guest is an internationally recognized young civil rights activist and movement strategist that educates lawmakers and stakeholders on the challenges and opportunities facing our communities. Tylik helped organize the 2020 Commitment March on Washington and 2021 March on for Voting Rights, which drew over hundreds of thousands to Washington, D.C. He has been recognized as a Bloomberg 50 One to Watch featured by Good Morning America, Washington Post, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, CNN, among other global, national, and local outlets. Table View, let's welcome Tylik McMillan.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How y'all doing?
We
Wonderful.
are good.
We appreciate you taking time out of your day to jump on with us. I know you are a very busy man. Every time I turn TV on, I see you up there just doing your thing.
Yes.
Look, I'm trying to keep up with my content like y'all do. So hey.
Okay. well, that's great, man. We do really appreciate you coming on. As you know, we went to school together, and I definitely recall the leadership that you had on campus. And I'm just so happy to see you keeping it going post undergrad life. So I know that you are a manager of state outreach and community advancement at CUNA. How exactly is that something that you fell into, and how do you fit that into all the other activities that you do during your free time?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, being here at CUNA has definitely been an amazing journey. I started at the beginning of this year, 2023, and so it's been an adjustment of making the transition from the civil rights space in here. I took a stint in between my work with Reverend Sharpton and did some racial community impact work, contracting wise, and I came here. So this is like my daytime job aside of all the other things that you said before that's in between. But it's been a great experience. The fact that as we talk about the racial wealth gap and folks attaining capital is most important. As we talk about folks being able to buy homes and start businesses, it all starts off with folks having the funds and the money and the capital to achieve those things. And so being in the financial services sector has been rewarding of how we can close that gap for marginalized communities, because first I show up to this workplace Black first, and so I'm always rooting for everybody Black. And so just that being at the forefront and me really being able to highlight what credit unions are doing across this country to really show up for communities by providing lower rates and allowing folks to achieve their dreams and do the big things that they want to do.
Yeah. So what are some ways that people in our community can close that wealth gap, or what resources are available to us to further close that gap?
Yeah, definitely. I think financial awareness comes first. In the month of April is financial literacy month, so it's an opportunity to provide insight on credit, lines of credit, or we're talking about saving habits, or just those basic things that many folks from our community really don't get exposure to. I was talking to one of my friends and my coworkers about the fact of I wasn't exposed to knowing about credit really until I was in college. And so ensuring that folks that are coming up in school have an understanding of financial stability, one, and understanding the ins and outs. And I think that's important. But also, as I said before, letting them know about resources and things such as credit unions that are providing these type of lower rates and giving folks access to build capital is important. So that's some advice that I would give is first get involved with a credit union. They're the best thing since sliced bread. Yeah. So that's a great opportunity.
Yeah, that's excellent. And I definitely agree with you, because I know when I was growing up, especially when I got to college, like credit unions, I mean, they're not the bigger name brands or bigger name chains. So you just assume it's second class somewhat. And it wasn't until I graduated where I really looked at a credit union and learned more about the resources they have available and the things that they can do for me to help me financially, where I realized that it's not second class in any way. It's just an alternative type of place where you can save your money, invest your money, and get more resources to put you in a better position. So I'm glad that you mentioned that.
Yeah, and a good thing to point out is member owned. When we think about banks, that's money that's going into the stock market that in turn is a it's a gamble that you're making with your money, as we just seen recently with the bank, big bank that happened in Silicon Valley. But the fact when we look at credit unions, the fact of the matter is, like, it's member owned. All the money that goes into the credit union is then returned back to its members by lower rates, etc. And your money's safe. I mean, who don't like their money to be safe? And so it's great benefits about it.
Yes. So earlier you did mention Rev Al Sharpton. So from my understanding that he is your mentor, what has he taught you, and what do you think that you've taught him?
I think we taught each other a lot back and forth. He always told me growing up that it's not about a generation that knows it all or a generation that has all the energy, but it's our synergy together. And so it's the fact of working together that really makes his work possible. But I think something that I've taught him, we come from two different generations. Jesse Jackson was his mentor, his father figure. And here he is, mentoring folks like me in this space. And so understanding that each generation learns new things, each generation sees things different ways, and it's important for us to be open and receptive to the new generation's way of thinking. And I say it all the time, what Dr. King's dream was that he gave at the March on Washington is just totally different than what some words that I was echoing in 2020, is the fact that we deserve these things. We're not here to ask for these things, but we deserve the right to education and fair housing, and to achieve this dream for the check that was bounced. And so I think, as I said before, like it's about accepting new ways of thinking and understanding that's what moves us forward. And as I said before, even us as a younger generation, being able to understand that we stand on the shoulders of giants, of sheroes and heroes who have come before us. And so just respecting our elders and the groundwork that they laid for us to be here, to have the opportunities that we have, and really being able to dwell and listen on that wisdom is so important. I have gotten so much wisdom from him. And I really that's probably one thing that has really stood out to me is definitely that quote.
That's great.
That's good.
Do you ever help him out with like social media or anything like that?
I mean, look, one thing I understand about Rev has always held down his social media. So when you see his selfies and you see what he do, he drinking his kale drink every morning, or whether he in the gym working out 5 a.m. Before dawn, that's his thing. He holding it down himself.
Well, that's good. That's great. So, I know that you are, a young civil rights activist and definitely a leader within our community. There is no question about that. But I do want to get your insight as to what you think are some of the biggest challenges that the Black community is facing today. I know you mentioned the wealth gap. I know you mentioned opportunities for additional education and so much more. But what are, like, if you had to give me a top 3 or top 5, like, what are those core issues that you think we're dealing with currently?
Yeah, definitely. And I would say it's a tremendous honor and a lifetime to be in these spaces, to represent communities and young folks in a lot of these powerful spaces. But one thing I always say when I go into them spaces is that one thing about Black people, or people in general, we're not monolithic. And so we don't all think alike. We all don't, we all come from different backgrounds and beliefs and family origins. And so when I step into the spaces, I don't speak for everybody, but I speak for the folks that I can relate to and folks that I can connect with, that I've heard from on the ground. But some things that I think is most pressing in this day and time is definitely, as we talk about criminal justice reform, we think about the school to prison pipeline, and how the fact of we continue to crowd and overwhelm the majority of prisons and jails across this country. Yet, when we look at our population compared to the rates that we see in jail, and so as we talking about criminal justice reform, as we talk about policing in our country, of feeling safe when we walk out to our communities, ensuring that money is being invested into our educational system. I think it's no reason that we are going to college and being stuck in debt for decades and decades. Point blank clear, I just think college should be free. And when we look at the opportunities of the fact, when we think about how Black, the debt rate is much higher for Black borrowers than it is for our white counterparts. That is something that's critical. When we think about in general, I think the pandemic showed a lot of the disparities that we see in our communities, whether that's from the broadband gap, the fact of internet accessibility. Many communities, we live in 2023, don't even have access to internet, and so that being a huge factor of importance. I think tech is the new civil rights of the 21st century. When we think about AI, artificial intelligence, and we think about a lot of these things that are overwhelming and taking over our world, like we're behind the ball on a lot of these things, and those are some main things that I'll point out. So I'll say safety, education, and definitely tech, and of course, as we mentioned before, the finance realm.
Great. So because I love that you mentioned the tech aspect, which a lot of people are going to assume is targeted towards the younger generation. What are a couple of things that the younger generation, people our age, that are stepping into these leadership positions can be doing to help us overcome these obstacles? How can we leverage AI? How can we leverage lawmaking and policing and things going on like that to make sure that we're in the best position overcoming these challenges that we're dealing with?
Yeah, I think representation definitely matters, and not only does representation matters, but having folks in this space or in these spaces who understand the values, and the trajectory of where we're trying to push our community towards. A lot of times we got people in this space that look like us that ain't for us.
Right.
So ensuring that as we're putting people in these spaces, that they understand our struggles and they understand what it takes to move us forward. And it is also a pressure on, not only diversifying, these, political rooms, but diversifying these boardrooms and C-suite level, positions, filling up boardrooms with people that look like us. And so understanding where these corporate companies should be investing in our communities and investing in historically Black colleges and universities that continue to produce our next engineers and astronauts of the world. And so our doctors and lawyers. And so just understanding that importance and making sure that we're in them spaces, but not only are we in them spaces, but the people who are representing us understand the struggles that it took for us to endure, and also to move us forward.
Right. Yeah, I love that you added that, because I do know it is common where you see, if we do make it to that space, sometimes the mindset is, well, I'm the only one. I'm the one Black person who can be in this seat. I'm that one, and I don't want to mess it up by trying to bring in others. So it's almost like, yeah, you've made it, you're in that position, but you're not doing anything to reach back for your community. And I'm not saying that's all people, but I do know that there's certainly some that tend to think that way. And I do think it's critical for us to try to change that mindset, to think, once I get to the position where I can impact my community, let me reach back and help others so that I can change the way this entire organization looks and the way this entire organization thinks, all for the better, of course. So I agree with you with that.
Yeah, definitely. Like it's all about, creating that space. And it says all the time, like, if we are not at the table, then we're on the dinner menu. And so ensuring that when we get inside these rooms, that we're creating space, as you mentioned before, and opening the door for folks to come after us, to not only sit at the table and make room at the table, but sometimes to even set up another table or even extend the length of the table to bring more chairs to it. So it's diversity, and is a good thing. Diversity of thought is a good thing. And so it's always important and critical to have more of us in the room.
Certainly.
That's great. So as far as the civil rights movement, how do you think it has shaped the country that we live in today?
Yeah, I think, a lot of the major wins that we see came off the back of these different movements. Whether, if you think about the Civil Rights Movement, think about the Voting Rights Act or the Fair Housing Act, or a lot of these landmark pieces of legislation. The Civil Rights movement definitely, has strengthened and encouraged that. But as I look at it in today's time, I think, as I mentioned before, the aspect of movements through time change as issues change, people evolve, right. Dynamics change, and I think the civil rights movement is still strong as it was before. It may look different than it was before, but it takes a lot of more strategy, and we have a lot more opportunity now, living in a more digital space, a more diverse space. This new generation, Gen Z, thinks different. The most diverse generation in history, and so we have a cool opportunity to really do bigger and better things. But we got to watch out. But before, as Rev, I'm throwing another Rev quote in again. Before, when we was dealing with Jim Crow, now we're dealing with James Crow Esquire. So we got to be a little more intentional with the work that we're doing, because it's a lot more precise as we think about different legislation and tech and all these different things that are thrown in the hat.
Yeah. So we know that you were recognized by Vice President Kamala Harris, and as the White House, as a prominent young voice to help lead our nation. I'm sure that's a really special feeling, really, really interesting experience. Could you give us a little bit of insight into what that looks like?
Yeah, definitely. For Black History Month this past year, I got a email from the White House that the Vice President wanted to recognize me. And one, it's like I said, it's a great honor to not only be recognized, but to have some of the most influential, the world leaders that that are seeing the work that I wake up and do every day. So I mean, it felt special, but I think it was only a reminder to myself of the as I say, the calling of God that God has put over my life, to understand that I can't give up days that I want to give up and give in, and I just like I'm sick and tired of it. Yeah. And I'm tired of like the pressure, or just the fact of trying to keep myself together sometimes. But understanding just the calling that's over my life, and that this work is not only for me, but this work that we do is for generations yet unborn. And when my children's children are looking in history books, when y'all's children's children are looking at history books, I want them to say that my parents had a friend that did something. and that's all. And that's all that we can hope for, is just that when we look back, that people say that we did something. And I'm honored that that they wanted to recognize me. So it was a great honor.
Well, that's great. So you did go to the White House. You did meet with Vice President Harris and everything, right? Like in person. None of it was virtual or any of that.
Well, yeah. The recognition was something that she did throughout her social media and etc. Okay. I engage with the White House and Vice President Harris all the time, especially as it relates to Black men and mental health. Yeah. But I engage with the White House a lot often, and so just grateful for the opportunity to actually be in spaces like that. So
okay, so I gotta ask this. Does she smell like cocoa butter? Is there some shea butter?
Let me tell you.
I know there's some type of scent.
Oh my goodness.
She is so well kept together. And she does smell good. She smells good. The hair is always laid. I ain't never seen the hair out of place. And the suit, I ain't never seen a wrinkle in it. The creases is always fresh. But she's cool, down to earth. But we as always, even though we love her, and she's an HBCU grad, and AKA, I still am going to hold her feet to the fire and hold her accountable. So that's why we do this work.
Yep. Yes. That's what it's all about. Well, you're doing great work, man, and we really do appreciate it. Just to wrap it up, we know that you're recognized as a Bloomberg 51 to watch. You've been featured on Good Morning America, Washington Post, New York Times. I mean, the list can keep going and going and going. What are your next goals? Like what's next for you? Some would say you done it all. And you're still on your way, so what's next for you? What other goals do you have?
Yeah, the good quotes say, rest if you must, but don't you quit. So I mean, it's only the beginning. I'm better than the goal is to be better than we are yesterday. But my ultimate goal, I would love to be a lawmaker one day. I'm inspired by people like Congressman John Lewis, who was not only in the streets but in the suites. And my goal is to not only be in the streets, but to be able to be a legislator myself. And so one day I want to be in Congress. One day I want to run for office, whether that's at the state level, the national level. But I want to be a lawmaker one day. But yeah, that's probably one of my big goals. And if it leads to the White House, we can have a nice little A&T turn up on the White House lawn.
little G-Ho at the White House.
Telling you, G-Ho at the White House. That could be a thing.
I'm with it. I'm with it all the way. Well, we truly do appreciate it, man. You were doing great work. I constantly see the work that you do, and I'm always impressed. And I just want you to know, I want you to keep going, keep striving, because you are excelling so much.
Yep.
So just
Super
want to
proud of you.
Yep, just want to
I appreciate the flowers, and I want to say I'm gonna give y'all flowers too. That I admire you too. I admire your love for one another. I admire, just the example that you are setting for our generation of what real love looks like and what partnership looks like. Man, I just pray God continues to bless you. I God continue to bless your home and all of your endeavors and everything that you touch. I pray that it exceeds your expectation, and it returns to you 100-fold. Because of the good energy and love that you both are putting out to the world. So shout out to y'all.
Oh,
thank you so much. We appreciate that, man.
Of course.
You give everyone your handles for Instagram, Twitter, any social.
You can follow me on all social media at Tylik McMillan, TYLIK McMillan, MCMILLAN. And just keep up with the kid. If you want to get engaged or want to know more about the work that I'm doing or how you can get involved, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And we can get in some good trouble together.
All right, TV crew, you heard it from him first. Blow up his DM and figure out what we can do.
Yes, sir.
All right, well, we appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Thank you again.
15 till forever, there's nobody that's better. You've been with me in the sun and the stormy weather. Want you to have my son.